History is repeating. Starbucks is closing stores, they're laying off employees, and customers are quietly walking away. But here's the strange part. Americans aren't drinking less coffee. In fact, coffee consumption is near all-time highs. Cold brew is booming. Specialty drinks are everywhere. Home espresso machines are selling out. So if coffee sales are still exploding, why is Starbucks shrinking? The answer isn't about coffee. It's about something far more dangerous. It's about a mistake almost every empire makes right before it collapses. Because Starbucks didn't just sell coffee, it sold belonging, a feeling, a ritual. And for decades, it worked beautifully. But if you look closely, the warning signs today look uncomfortably similar to what destroyed other once invincible brands before. This isn't just the story of Starbucks. It's a lesson about what happens when growth replaces purpose. And history starts repeating itself. Here's the part most people don't know. Starbucks wasn't even a coffee shop when it started. In 1971, it was a tiny store in Seattle selling coffee beans and brewing equipment. No lattes, no music, no names written on cups. Just three coffee nerds obsessed with quality. They didn't want to build an empire, they just loved good beans. Then, in the early 80s, a guy named Howard Schultz walked in. And everything changed. Schultz wasn't a founder, he was an outsider. But during a trip to Italy, he saw something that completely reshaped his vision. Espresso bars. Not fast, not rushed, not transactional. People stood at counters. They talked. They laughed. They knew the barista's name. Coffee wasn't the product. Connection was. Schultz realized something Americans didn't have. A third place. Not home, not work, something in between. A space to exist without pressure, and when Schultz eventually bought Starbucks and took control, that idea exploded. He didn't just open stores, he built environments, warm lighting, comfortable chairs, jazz music, friendly baristas. Starbucks did three things perfectly. First, they made coffee feel premium. Before Starbucks, coffee in America was cheap and forgettable. Diners, gas stations, office break rooms. Starbucks changed the psychology. Suddenly paying more meant taste, care, craftsmanship. The cup felt intentional. Second, they empowered employees. Baristas weren't disposable. They received healthcare benefits, stock options, training. For a retail job in the 90s, that was revolutionary. Employees felt valued, and customers could feel it too. Third, they sold identity. That white cup with the green logo wasn't just a drink, it was a signal. I appreciate quality. I'm modern. I'm part of something. Carrying Starbucks felt cultural. By the 90s, Starbucks wasn't growing. It was dominating. A new store opened almost every business day. Let that sink in. Every single business day. Revenue exploded. Wall Street loved it. The brand felt untouchable. But that's where the danger started. Growth became the goal. Not experience, not quality, not culture, speed, scale, expansion. Stores opened so quickly that some locations were across the street from each other, cannibalizing their own traffic. Machines replaced manual espresso pulls. Automation replaced craft. Efficiency replaced intimacy. Howard Schultz himself later admitted it in a leaked internal memo. He wrote that Starbucks had commoditized its own experience. That word is devastating. Commoditized. It means interchangeable, replaceable, ordinary. The soul, the thing people originally fell in love with, was fading, and customers noticed. Coffee began tasting burnt. Stores felt identical. Furniture became standardized. The intimate cafe atmosphere quietly was replaced by something colder and more calculated. A chain. Then something worse. A system. The magic was thinning. But the real damage came next. Prices kept rising. A latte that cost $4 became $5, then $6, then $7 in major cities. Customizations cost extra. Alternative milk, extra. Extra shot, extra. Cold foam, extra. Meanwhile, customers began noticing smaller cup sizes. Sugar levels in popular drinks skyrocketed. Seasonal drinks felt engineered rather than crafted. Quality stayed flat, but prices didn't. Starbucks quietly transformed from a coffee company into a dessert brand with caffeine, frappuccinos, caramel drizzles, pumpkin spice everything. The drinks weren't bad, but they weren't craftsmanship. They were engineered indulgence. People weren't paying premium prices for artistry anymore. They were paying for habit, and habits feel harmless until money gets tight. When inflation hit, everything changed. Groceries cost more, gas cost more, rent cost more. That daily Starbucks run stopped feeling like a treat. and started feeling like a bad financial decision. $7 a day, 5 days a week, that's over $1,800 a year. Suddenly, the math didn't feel cute. It felt irresponsible. That's when the exodus began. But here's the real irony. Starbucks succeeded too well. They educated an entire generation about good coffee. They introduced Americans to espresso, to cappuccinos, to single-origin beans. They raised the standard. And competitors watched carefully. McDonald's improved McCafe, Dunkin' upgraded quality. Local cafes exploded in popularity. Even gas stations stepped up their game. And then came the real disruptor: home brewing, Nespresso, Keurig, Breville espresso machines, TikTok baristas teaching latte art from your kitchen. Suddenly, Starbucks wasn't special. It was convenient and expensive. Convenience alone doesn't build loyalty. Connection does. This pattern isn't new. It happened to Blockbuster. They dominated video rentals, ignored streaming, focused on late fees, gone. It happened to Sears. They were Amazon before Amazon. Catalogs, distribution, scale. But they stopped innovating, gone. It happened to Subway. Rapid expansion, standardization, declining quality, customers noticed, and walked away. Empires don't usually collapse overnight. They erode. Slowly, quietly. At first, it's small signals. Lower same-store sales, higher employee turnover, leadership reshuffles, public relations crises. Then it compounds. Starbucks today is facing unionization waves across stores. Employees report burnout. Customers complain about long drive-through lines and inconsistent quality. Leadership keeps changing direction. Mobile ordering dominates the experience now, and mobile ordering is efficient, but it's not intimate. You walk in, grab a cup with your name misspelled, leave. No conversation, no third place. Just transaction. The brand that once felt human now feels corporate, and customers can sense that shift instantly. Brands are emotional organisms. The moment authenticity fades, people feel it, even if they can't articulate why. Starbucks isn't dead, not even close. It still generates billions in revenue. It still has global presence. It still owns some of the most recognizable branding in the world. But the myth of Starbucks, the invincible cultural icon, the emotional gathering space, the lifestyle symbol, that version is cracking. Because no amount of pumpkin spice can fix a broken foundation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The problem was never coffee. It was forgetting the mission. Starbucks was built to be a third place, a refuge, a pause between chaos. But scale makes intimacy hard. Shareholders demand growth. Growth demands efficiency. Efficiency sacrifices nuance. And nuance is where magic lives. When growth replaces purpose, brands drift. They become optimized, but not loved. And once love fades, price becomes the only differentiator. That's a dangerous place to be, because someone will always be cheaper. Here's the real takeaway. Brands don't die when they get expensive. They die when they forget who they were built for. They die when systems replace soul, when shareholders replace customers, when convenience replaces connection. History doesn't repeat itself quietly. It repeats loudly, over and over, until someone notices. Blockbuster didn't notice. Sears didn't notice. Subway didn't notice. The question is, will Starbucks notice? Because there's still time. Brands can return to purpose. They can rebuild culture. They can slow down, reconnect, refocus. But only if they admit the drift. Only if they remember why people fell in love in the first place. And that applies to more than coffee. It applies to companies, to careers, even to people. When you forget your why, you become replaceable. When you remember it, you become magnetic. Starbucks taught America how to drink better coffee. Now it has to decide whether it still wants to be more than just a place that sells it. Because history is repeating. Empires rise, they scale, they optimize, they forget. And then they wonder why people leave. The collapse doesn't start with bankruptcy. It starts with indifference. And indifference is quiet, but powerful. Starbucks isn't collapsing because people hate coffee. It's struggling because it replaced connection with convenience and culture with efficiency. And that shift changes everything. The siren logo still glows. The drinks are still sweet. The stores are still busy. But the question lingers. Is it still a third place? Or just another transaction? History doesn't repeat itself quietly. It repeats until you notice. And now, you've noticed.